Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to the AutoCAD Tips and Tricks webcast. Today's presenter, as always, is Ryan Wunderlich. Ryan, the floor is yours.
All right, good morning everyone. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. So just a quick blurb about me. I always tell you this, even though you probably already know this by now. I have 35 years of experience in AutoCAD across multiple industry segments. I've taught AutoCAD at a community college as a certified instructor, and I do teach AutoCAD, Civil 3D, InfraWorks, and multiple things here, still even Revit in our Boise office. I've had more than 15 years as a CAD manager or been in CAD management. I've done, the last job I did before I became here at IMAGINiT was that I was doing cruise ship building, and so I was involved in the new build and revitalization process. I've done 5 years support in civil, survey, and landscape architecture before that. I've worked in multiple fields. Pretty much the only thing I have not done at this point is aerospace design or automotive design, but I've done almost everything else. I have a bachelor's in business management and a master's in organizational management. So we're just going to have 3 easy tips and tricks today. Base view, we're going to talk about how that works. We're going to talk about the rename function, which is one of those functions that is not available via pull down. Anything else, you have to actually type out that command. And then we're going to talk about drawing cleanup and recovery process. So when things go wrong or you don't understand why something's not working with that, and also talk about the steps that we want to put in place whenever you have drawings that come in to your organization from outside. And those things are critical because if you're not cleaning up those drawings before you work on them, now you're introducing new sets of things into your own environment that can cause you problems later. So base view, just want to make sure that everyone knows this is for the full AutoCAD only. LT does not have this functionality. So what the base view does is it's model documentation drawing views that are derived directly from a 3D model. And I cannot stress enough that model space must have a 3D model in it. If it is just a flat 2D, it's going to prompt you to find an inventor file, and I'll show you that. The first drawing view that you place in the drawing is the base view, and then you can specify scale, display settings, all of these other things that can go on, and then you can project views, inherit most of their settings from the base view. When you change the settings for the base view, the projected views also follow by default. And these, if required, you can also overwrite these settings in the project views. The overridden settings do not follow the base view. And base view from 3D models contain all visible 3D solids and surfaces in model space by default. You can use some command line options to create base views for selected objects only. Does this only work for Inventor? This is for AutoCAD. And so when I get to the demonstration, I'll show you what an AutoCAD 3D model looks like, and then I will show you what happens when it does not have any 3D models in model space and what it will prompt you for. And generally speaking, it's only for Inventor parts. So these are found only in the Layout tab, so make sure that you are in the Layout Contextual tab to see them. You will see that there is projected views here, creates a child view from a parent base view, section views to create cross sections from a base view, and a detail view to create detailed views from a base view. So with that, we're going to get into just a quick demonstration here. So the first thing is you're going to see I have just a random 3D object, right? If we look at it in a conceptual form, this is exactly what it looks like. Right? We can all see this here. And so what I've done here is I've gone ahead and created a layout here that shows you what we can actually do with this. So what we have here is we have our initial base view, and then we have the side view, the top view, an isometric view, and then I have some other derived views. And we'll actually go through this as part of the demonstration, but I just wanted to show you these are the things that occur. So when I grab one of these, which is a derived view, you'll see I cannot drag it orthogonally up or down. I can only drag it left or right because this is one of those projected views that is actually, or this is a section view here that is being derived from this, or sorry, this is a projected view from this model here. And so I cannot change its orientation. I can always come in here and I can change this one left to right. I cannot change it up or down because everything is derived off of this base view. If I move the base view up, you'll see that all of my views move with it that are derived from it. So if I turn Did I lose audio there? Sorry.
No, I can hear you.
Okay, it just told me I had gone into mute mode for
Okay.
some reason. All right, so again, as I drag this base view around, because this lower left-hand corner was my initial base view, you'll see all of my derived views come from there, but the isometric view does not change. So these are the things I want to show you. So we're actually going to go through this exercise. We're going to go to Layout 2, and I'm going to start a brand new one. Again, come up to the top. You have to be in the contextual layout view. You go to Base, and you go from Model Space, and you'll see this is the derived piece of information. I can click here. And you'll see I can select orientation, hidden line, scale, visibility, move, exit. So all I'm going to do here is, if I want to change the scale, our current view base scale is 1.5. So if I just change that to 1, it'll go bigger. If I go scale and go 0.25, now it's a quarter the size. So this would be 1:4 scale. And then I hit enter, and you'll see it now allows me to derive the rest of my views. And as I drag this information out, you'll see that it goes ahead and creates all of this information. Now, where did they go? Base from model space. Here, we're going to change scale. We're going to go 0.25, enter, here, 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 enter. I know why it's doing that, because I've already got a layout space here. So let's go ahead and just delete this. And let's see if it will let me now create this, this, this. All right, we're going to play with this. So that's normally the operation. You go through that, you hit enter at the very end, and it should go ahead and create those correctly. And then we can come in here, we can do this, and I'll show you some other things. So for example, I'm just going to come here and delete. This is one of my detail views, and you'll see when I delete this detail view, it automatically deleted its view that it's associated with. If I delete our section view here, it will delete my section view as well. Where would I look for a layout tab if working in Civil 3D? First thing you have to do is down here at the bottom should be your layouts. Now, I will warn you, one of the things about Civil 3Ds is you're only going to see objects that are truly three-dimensional, such as surfaces. Your alignments will not come in a base view. You will only see surfaces, corridors, things like that. Anything that's 3D, because most of your alignments are 2D, and you will not see that. Usually won't let me edit as it would. Is there a workaround to be able to edit those views? That, Maria, we would actually have to address separately, because I'd need to see what's going on. There may be an issue with the drawing, or we may have to do some other things. So again, we're going to talk about projected views. So it creates an orthographic, right? So this right here we can get rid of. So if I create a projected view, it's going to I should be able to update view. And if I click on one of these views, you should have the edit view here, where you can change that. And if you're not seeing that, unable to perform, this drawing was last edited with model documentation in a newer version of AutoCAD. That is incorrect, because this is the same version I created this with. Bear with me, base view here, layout. Okay, so let's go back to our layout tab. We are going to go projected. I'm going to select the parent view here. And you're going to see that is a projected view from this item right here. So I can actually create multiple views this way. If I wanted a section view, it says, do I want a full section, a half section, an offset, or an aligned, or from objects? So for example, I can do a full section view. I select my information here, and I just simply draw my section view bubble. And I'll see what side do I want it to be on. And now you will see a section view through here, and now I can click and drag this view wherever I want. I should be able to click and drag this view. There it is. Grab the wrong view. And now I will have a section view down here that shows that cross section at the letter C. So if I change this, so for example, if I click and drag, I can actually change the grips on this. And you'll see I can alter this section view to here. And you'll see that it updates my section view here. I can update here as well. And now I see just this little bulb. So there's a lot of ways you can manipulate the information in here. So with that being said, that's more or less how you use base view. Detail view is the same way. Do you want a circular or rectangle detail? If I want a rectangular detail, again, I pick here, pick my rectangle. Right, and that's going to derive this. Now if I come back in here, I should have a detail somewhere unless I made a mistake on it. Let's go back and create a new rectangular detail. I'm going to select this as my parent. There's my detail view through that section. And you'll see that it automatically comes in with detail D. So if I didn't create those parts from Inventor, then this won't work, correct? Well, if you created them in Civil 3D, it works, or in just plain AutoCAD, it works just fine. This is just a plain AutoCAD drawing. Okay, that's all that's in here with some standard AutoCAD 3D solids. So if you're generating this out of AutoCAD, plain AutoCAD, you can create 3D and it will allow you to do this. Now if we come to this drawing and we go through the same process, there is nothing in model space. It's completely blank. We come to our layout. We're going to come back into our layout tab, and then I go base, and if I say from model space, it's going to ask me to go ahead and select a file, and you will see that I have the ability to pick Inventor presentations, parts, and assemblies. Again, I will go ahead and click this here. I'll put it there. I'll put it there, and I'll put an isometric over here, and I'll hit enter. This is a part directly derived from Inventor. I don't need to have Inventor installed on my machine, but you will see that it actually gives me the full Inventor part as it was modeled in Inventor and gives me this information. So I could actually come up here and I could come over here to my properties, and you'll see our standard scale is from parent right here. So I can modify this. So if I want this to be at a different scale, so let's say we want this to be maybe 1 to 5 scale, it'll change it down to 1 to 5. If I want this to be 2 to 1, I can change that to be 2 to 1, which is what everything is coming in currently. So you have this, and the nice thing about this is if you have the Inventor part, you can actually use what's called transspatial dimensioning. So I can go to my annotate. I can just run a standard dimension line through my transspatial dimensioning. I can pick this endpoint. I can pick this endpoint here, and this is, that's a rotated dimension, but that would be the actual dimension between this point here and this point here, right? That's 4.5. Again, I don't need to know exactly what size the part truly is. Transspatial dimensioning, if I'm dimensioning in the viewport or the base view from model space and I'm using my O-snaps, it will give me the correct dimensions. And again, we have the same information that we can do here in the Layout tab. I can draw a section view, select this, right, and we'll go F8 to make ortho turned on. Right. Sorry, I hit escape. Let's do this one more time. Enter. I'm going to click this here and enter. And that is my derived section, A facing that way. I can actually click on this, and you'll see I can move identifier. I can reset the identifier position, etc. I can hover over here, and I can flip direction. And you'll see when I flip the direction, it automatically flipped my section view here through that area. Exported models for Revit? No, because so if you're talking about exported models from Revit, you would have to export that as a DWG, or you'd need to export that in some way so that you can bring it into AutoCAD as a 3D solid. If you move, change, edit the object's location in model space, do the views change as needed? So that is a very good question. Because this information here in base view is derived from here, I can go ahead and move this. Right? All I did was move that. When I come back to my layout space, you'll see that it got real funky. Okay, so we auto update everything, update all views. And so what we have here now is we have some information, because this information is derived from where that model is. So if you move the model, generally speaking, you're going to have to erase your base views and start over. So if you move the model in model space, that's a very good question. You've got to redo that. So that's more or less base view in a nutshell. And again, I can use inventor-derived parts, but the only thing it accepts is you have to have something that's a three-dimensional model in model space like this, or you have to have an inventor part. Those are the only two ways that this works in plain AutoCAD. Okay. So moving on. Now we're going to talk about rename. This is a function very few people use or know about, and it's one of my favorites. So this works in all AutoCAD versions, so LT is included. Rename is available only via the command line. You must type it in. And why did that? Let's see. For some reason, this got huge because it was not this huge earlier. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to rename certain things in your drawing. So it allows you to rename blocks, do detail view styles, dimension styles, layers, line types, materials. All of these styles with the exception of the information that is standard out of the box. You cannot rename layer 0. You cannot rename anything that has the name standard because those are all built in. See, what version of AutoCAD have 3D function you just mentioned? Okay, so the 3D function in AutoCAD, you have to be using full AutoCAD. AutoCAD LT does not support 3D that way. So, talking about rename, sorry, we're going to come back to rename, and we're going to actually do some couple of exercises here. So, I'm in a drawing here. This drawing's fairly busy. I'm going to type in rename, and you're going to see that I have the ability here to rename blocks. How many of you copy and then paste as a block inside your drawings, and you end up with a bunch of these $C nonsense? Well, I don't know what that block is, but let's say I need this block to be a little more intuitive for future use, so I can actually say, click on it here, and I'm going to say this is some inserted data, and then I click OK. And now when I come back into my rename function, you're going to see that $C disappeared, and now we have some inserted data as a block. I can do this with anything. So for example, I have layers in here. If I want this one arch plan dim to be one arch plan dim dash old, rename. And now that is one arch plan dim old right there. I can rename line type. So I have a center and a hidden line type in here. I have materials. So I have non-standard material. I have something called some non-standard material in here, and I can say, well, I really want this to be white paint. Rename it. Now it's renamed to white paint. I can do the same with multi-leader styles if I have them, table styles. And again, here's all my information, but for example, my table styles, you'll see I don't have anything in here. And the reason why is if I go to my Annotate tab and I look at my Table Styles editor, you'll see I have a standard table. You cannot rename, again, you cannot rename the standard stuff. If I create new, call this copy of standard, right? So now I have a copy of standard. And I go back to my rename function. I come down to Table Styles. There's my copy of standard. So now I could rename this to be, oh, this is our actual tables for use, rename. When I hit OK, I can come back up here to my table styles, and you'll see that it actually renamed this. So this is one of those hidden features and functions. People don't use this very often. I love rename, and the fact that what it allows me to do is if I have a block in my drawing and I want to insert a newer version of that block, but I don't want to override the block with the same name, I can rename the old one to something -old. I can come in here and say, all right, I want to get, let's say we are talking about, it could be this wide flange I-beam here. These are old. I can rename this to -old. I can insert this block again. Let's say you've had drawing or edits to this block. You can reinsert this block. It won't ask you to redefine because this essentially reads as a new block. Inserts, and then you have the old and the new. This is also a great way to come in here and clean up some of the things that we are all guilty of doing, especially if we cancel out of this, right? And all I'm going to do is grab this. I'm going to do Control-C, Control-Shift-V to paste as a block. And now when I go back to rename, you're going to see in our blocks, I have that $C block back in there. So those are some of the things, and really this comes down to if you are in these drawings often, it is really helpful to make sure that you are here. If you have text styles you need renamed, if you have viewports, if you have named views, so we have a number of named views in here. If you screwed up and named something wrong for a named view, you don't have to delete it. You could actually use the rename command and just rename the thing. So that's rename. That's one of my favorites, and I use it, like I said, fairly often. And now we're going to talk about the big elephant in the room. Drawing cleanup and recovery. This is going to work in all the AutoCAD versions, LT included. And we're going to be we will be covering all of the processes shown below. We're going to talk about the recover process when we go through and actually do a drawing recovery. We're also going to talk about audit, purge. We're going to talk about the one very few people actually use, which is minus purge. And there's one specific item you can get to from minus purge that you cannot get to from the regular purge. We're also going to talk about establishing a good process, and then I'm going to give you a bonus where you can do an erase all and remove visible objects because you may have information in your drawing that does not have any geometry in it that is also causing you problems. Right, so the first thing we're going to talk about here is we're going to go into back to AutoCAD. And I'm going to click up here. Right, we come down to drawing utilities. And we come in here and we do what's called recover. It's going to prompt me for a file. I have a file here that says that I've gotten labeled as recover. It's going to open up. You're going to see drawing recovery log. It's going to validate some objects. And you are going to see that this drawing file was recovered. There were 61 errors found, 61 errors fixed, and 17 objects that were deleted. And it says here, please review the information and inspect the drawing before saving it. Now, I know that this one has a problem in it specifically. And then you can go back through this list and you can see that this is actually a file that came from Civil, but we can still fix it here. We have some network rules for Civil that blew up. We have some network structures that blew up. We have a network part. These are all part of the part networks. And then we're going to see this, and we come in here. So that's just standard recover. That's pretty easy. And you're right, Michael, you can do this with scripting. However, if you are not familiar with scripting, we have to do this via what I call the brute force and ignorance method, where we have to go through each step one at a time. But I want to explain what each step is doing. So that's simply the drawing recover. That's the first thing that we're going to talk about. That's what it does. That usually gets your drawing back to a working state. Obviously, now we're going to talk about the easy one, right? We can go into purge, right? And you'll see in your standard purge box right here, you have the ability, so we have some dimension styles we can purge, some plot styles, some table styles, some text styles, All right, so I can just hit Purge Checked Items. It purges everything out, and if I go over to non-purgeable items, you'll see that I have some dimension styles that are in use, some layers that are in use. These are things I can't get rid of. But this information now is clean. Now we're going to talk about my favorites. So we have a minus purge. All right, so if I go to purge here, you're going to see that this drawing is fairly clean. I'll go ahead and purge everything. But what I'm going to talk about is the command line purge. We go minus purge, and this is the only place where you can get to something here called reg apps. These are registered applications that have been used in the drawing or have been used in something that has been inserted into your drawing, and these can cause problems. So I'm going to go reg apps. It says enter name to purge. I just simply hit enter here and verify. I always say no to this simply because I have run into situations where we have done minus purge on drawings that have 300,000 registered applications in it, and you don't want to be hitting Y, enter, Y, enter. So I usually say no. And what we're going to see in this drawing is we have some information in here that was actually purged out of this drawing. So we have keyed some stuff in here, exempt from CAD standards, ADE projections, some of this stuff. But what I want to point out is you've got some interesting things in here that are not normally part of this. You have something called IRD and CSE ISYEXT. So there is something that was used in this drawing at some point, or has been touched by something that this drawing has referenced, things like that. And usually what I'm looking for here is I like to keep this list down. If I can keep this list 30 or less, it usually helps drawing problems. If you have ever run into a situation where you are in a drawing and you just run a simple line command and it takes like 5 seconds for it to give you your base point, you click your base point, counts to 5, 10 before it lets you pick your second point, I usually come in and assume the minus purge reg apps is usually the culprit, because I'll come in here and find 90, 100, 200, 300, and in some cases I'll find massive amounts of these. Like I said, I've run into situations where I've run into 300,000 or more, and the drawing is literally unusable until we've purged these out. So this is one of those functions that not everyone knows. Can purge reg apps be used to address proxy object issues? No, because that proxy object is actually being detected properly. There is some ways to clear that. Where's the source of these apps? Let's see. I'll come back to you, David. The source of these apps can be anywhere. So, for example, if I'm in Civil 3D and I open up a drawing, and that drawing comes back with a bunch of EGPT or a bunch of, I think it's CRS or CLS, something like that, I know that they've either used Eagle Point or Carlson. And the problem I've found with the EGPT is every time you save and close the drawing, a lot of those registered applications duplicate as a new entry. And so they can actually end up creating huge bloat in the files. So proxy issues, those specific issues right there, there's a way to clear those out. Normally what you have to do is you either have to delete the proxy information, and you can do that. If you look back at my last webinar, I have something called walked you through the Q select, where you can go through and find any proxy objects. The other option is to insert your drawing. We can talk about that. We'll come back here to drawing 2. So what you do is you do the classic insert if you're in 2020, or it's just regular insert. You come in here, you find your drawing file, you uncheck all of these things, and you check the explode box. What that does, this is another drawing recovery method. This is what I call my last ditch effort. What will happen is that AutoCAD, when it inserts this drawing, what it's going to do is it's essentially copying each component out of the base drawing and inserting it into your drawing. And what that helps do is that it helps clear any of the garbage out there. If it cannot bring that in due to a proxy issue or something like that, it will actually dump it, and no longer have it in the new drawing you'd create this way. So that's where I usually find that. Radical Purge and Zombie Killer, I have never used those. I have not had a need to go beyond the basics of what's included in Civil 3D or AutoCAD out of the box, with very few exceptions. So that's that. And now we're going to talk about this. This is one of my favorites. This is one of the erase alls. So what you have in here, it's a fairly simple drawing, right? I'm going to invoke E for erase, and I'm going to type in the word all. And you'll see that it says there were 1,165 objects found and one was not in current space. That's because layout always has one. Okay. And I hit erase all. And then I hit R to remove the objects. And I just simply do a window over the objects that are visible. Now, before this, I've also turned on the layers. So all the layers on in the drawing, and I've thought all the layers, so everything that would be in here is visible. But what I want to point out to you is that I've done the erase all, I've removed everything that's visible. There are still 365 total objects in this drawing that are not visible or selectable in any normal way. The only way you can get to them is erase all. Then I can do that. Now I've removed those 365 objects, and now if I go to my purge, I may have the ability to purge, because you're going to see I have a bunch of blocks in here. Right? There's a bunch of blocks in here. And anytime you come in here, you may have a bunch of other stuff in here that can be, so we purge all. And it's going to chug through, and it's going to take quite a bit to purge everything. Let's see. All right, so you're saying you have several times where I want to delete a layer. It says I cannot delete it. How do I find what is on a layer? So what I usually do is I will come here. This is good for 2020. Otherwise, there's two ways to get around that particular issue. What you'll do is you'll find non-purgeable items. You'll go to layers. And so, for example, I will look at my grid layer, and you will see that it's in use in 61 objects. And I can usually find here what objects that layer is using. These are all the objects that are on that layer that's in use. So those are the things that I usually do. The other thing you can do, if you're trying to get rid of a layer, it says you can't delete it. You can do something called lay merge, L-A-Y-M-R-G, and I usually go N for name, so I could merge grid or hide or note, and then I can merge that onto another layer. So if you're trying to figure out how to get rid of layers, you can merge those extra garbage layers onto layer 0 or another one where you're just using it as a holding pattern until you figure out what's going on. So generally speaking, that's everything that I go through in a drawing cleanup process. What I usually look for is if you contact us and you're saying you're having trouble with the drawing, those are the typical things that I go through on a regular basis, where I do a recover first and look to see if anything comes in the salvage database. Then I may come through and just do a minus purge reg apps. I may do an erase all to confirm that you don't have any extra garbage in that drawing that's been come in. I know that in the past I have seen people insert blocks that all it has is layers and line types. That's not a selectable drawing. But the problem is once you've inserted that drawing, you cannot get rid of those layers until you purge that block definition entirely out of the drawing. And if you can't select it, you can't grab it, you can't pick it, you can't do anything. That's when the erase all comes into play. So I always refer back to this, is establish a good process. Establish a process for all incoming and outgoing drawings. So if you work with people who send you drawings that you need to use, I highly recommend putting in a process to go through and do the minus purge, the purge, get rid of all the extra garbage out of their drawings that you don't need or want to contaminate any of your drawings with. And and then save their drawing as like a dash clean, something like that. So you're not modifying their original information as far as what you've got. You keep their original file, but you have a clean file that you're working from. Document this process and always follow it when you have incoming drawings. I also recommend too is that you make sure that when you're sending drawings out to a client, the last thing you do is you may want to go through the process of purging and cleaning out all the extra garbage, because unfortunately what happens is that you may think that the drawing doesn't have certain information in it, but if you ever inserted it as a block, even if you've erased that block definition is still there. And I have seen people go through and find other information in drawings simply by going through the block table and finding out what's been inserted and erased. And if you run into that situation, now you could potentially expose yourself. So like I said, always establish a good process for incoming and outgoing drawings, and then document that process well and follow that process. Because as long as you're following that process, you are going to have fewer problems going forward with your own drawings. All right. Are there any additional questions anyone has, or anyone would like me to go back over?
I'm going to